Hi and welcome. My name's Nicola and I'll be talking you through your Level 2 Business Environment module. We start with Chapter 1 and this is all about the types of business entity. Here we'll see an introduction to standard organisational types and their key characteristics. We'll look at the difference between sole traders, partnerships, private and public limited companies and not-for-profit organisations. We'll also look at the process of forming a company and their record-keeping requirements. So let's think first of all about the entity concept. We prepare accounts for a business entity and we must understand what a business entity is. A business entity is a person or group of people carrying on a trade or an activity. So it could be the sole trader or a partnership or a company or a not-for-profit organisation. Now, each of these business entities will have its own advantages and drawbacks. They will have different levels of ease to set up. They'll have different levels of bureaucracy to run them. And we'll see more about these in the future chapters later on. The entity concept acknowledges that the business in question has its own separate identity apart from the owners. So we have the business entity's transactions, and completely separate from that, we record any personal transactions. So there is a distinction between the owners of the business and the transactions of the business. It means that personal transactions of all involved in the business are kept completely separate from the transactions of the business. As an example here, let's think about a sole trader, the local barbers in town. Now, the barber will receive money in the form of payment for the service of cutting hair, and that money will go into the till. So that is a transaction of the business. On a day-to-day basis, we have the owner, the barber, who's working, and he needs everyday lunch. What he should do is take money from his own pocket to go and buy his lunch, because this is a personal transaction. It's not a transaction of the business, so these have to be kept separately. We'll now look at how different types of business organisation are structured. And before we do that, we need to understand the distinction between ownership and management. It says in the notes here it's important to understand the distinction. The legal owners of a business, also called the members or the shareholders, will have invested money into the business. And what they're doing is they're hoping for a return on their investment. So if it's a sole trader, they'd be hoping for profit and for organisational growth. And for a limited company, a shareholder will be expecting dividends or an increase in the value of the shares. and they're expecting a return on their investment because they've actually taken a risk in investing their personal money into the business. On the other hand, we have the management of the business. So this will be the top management, also the directors of the business, and they are distinct from the owners. They're responsible for the day-to-day running of the business. They'll make decisions and they'll enter into transactions on behalf of the business. They'll not necessarily own any part of the business. The aim of the directors is to run the organisation in the best interests of the shareholders, those that own the company. Let's think of an example here. So our shareholders, they've invested their personal money in the company, and those funds that have been brought in by the owners of the business, they're actually shown as capital in our financial accounts. It's actually an amount the organisation owes back to the owners. And the profit would go in this section as well, because the profit actually belongs to the shareholders as a return. We then have separately the management and the directors, and they're responsible for efficient use of those funds to grow the business. So they may decide in the day-to-day running of the business to invest in machinery to increase production and efficiency. Hi. Let's think about this word organisations. What do we mean when we say business organisations? Well, an organisation is a collection of people. And the aim is that they work towards a particular objective. It's a framework that establishes communication lines and responsibilities. Account a butcher, a baker, a candlestick maker, perhaps a hairdresser, a plumber, an electrician. Now, legally, there is no distinction between the individual and their business. So, what does this mean? This means that the business activities all belong to the individual. They own and they run the business. So, they put their own cash in and they manage the business on a day-to-day basis. As a sole trader, you are fully liable for all the debts of the business. So if your bakery wasn't performing very well and you were losing money, then you would be personally liable for the debts of the business. It's the individual that would have to pay. They run the risk of losing all their personal possessions. If the business is sued, then it's the individual who is personally liable. So, a main drawback of being a sole trader is that it is extremely risky. One of the main advantages, however, they have complete control. They can do what they like, it's their business. So, legally, no distinction. However, for accounting purposes, we do separate them. So let's look at an example here. Let's take our butcher. The butcher's wife, phones the butcher on a Sunday. I would like to cook a roast dinner. Can you bring some beef home, please? We're going to have roast beef. Now, what should happen in accounting terms, we have to separate the butcher from the butchery. So the butcher should record this as a sale, put his hand in his pocket and take out his personal money and put it in the till of the butcher's. Now, in reality, this probably is not what's going to happen. Something to note down at the bottom here, some of the features of a sole trader. Very relaxed here. There's no legislation at all that dictates how the sole trader business should be run, and also there is no set format about what our accounts should look like. Welcome back. We're now going to move on to a partnership. A partnership sometimes develops from a sole trader. People may go into partnership together to benefit from shared expertise. There's someone else to consult when making business decisions, and they might have a sense, or they will have a sense of shared direction. Now, a common misconception is that a partnership is two individuals. It's actually two or more people coming together with a view to make a profit. Commonly, doctors will be a partnership, dentists, solicitors, and accountants as well. Essentially, partnerships are like a group of sole traders. So, in accounting terms, we will treat them separately. Accounting terms, we treat them separately, but legally, once again, the same as sole traders, there's no distinction between the business and the individual partners. So let's have a look at what this means. This means that partners in a partnership are fully liable for the debts of the partnership. We say that the liability is joint and several. This means that if one partner cannot meet their share of the liabilities, then it would fall onto the other partners to make up their share. And we have a numerical example here. If A and B were in a 50-50 partnership and there were debts of £100,000, both A and B would need to pay £50,000 each to cover those debts. If partner A, however, only had £10,000, then partner B would have to pay the remaining £90,000. The liability is split over the partners, and this is an advantage compared to a sole trader that we saw in the previous recording. A few things to note here. Very much like sole traders, partnerships are not required to register in order to start trading, nor do they have to file accounts. So financial details do not go into the public domain. Partnerships may have a partnership agreement. It'll include things such as the profit sharing ratio, details of any partner's salaries, interest on capital put into the business, and any interest on drawings, money taken out of the business. If a partnership doesn't have an individual documented agreement in place, then the rules of the Standard Partnership Act 1890 apply, and this is a piece of legislation that covers how partnerships are run. There is no set format for how partnership accounts must be prepared, so there is not a single format used. Hi, welcome back. We're now going to continue with business organisations and look at limited companies. A limited company is a separate legal entity that is recognised in law. So it's very different to what we've seen with sole traders and partnerships. Here's our limited company. They have their own legal identity. And this means that a limited company can own assets in its own right. It can sue and be sued in its own right. Now, what do we mean by that? We mean that the company is distinct from its owners and its managers. Here in our diagram, we have our shareholders, we have our members, and what they've done is they've invested their own cash in return for shares, and therefore they own an equity stake in our company. The shareholders or the members will appoint the directors. The directors are at the top of an organisation and it's their role to run the company. Now, they may also own a share of the company, but their rights, their roles are different. It's the directors who run the company, it's the shareholders that own the company. In order to form a company, you must register the company at Companies House. And we'll see a lot more about this later on in the chapter. Once a company is registered, you will receive a certificate of incorporation. And this will name your company and it will have a unique number so that your company can be looked up easily on Companies House. Unlike sole traders and partnerships, the company itself is liable for its own debts. This way, if the company cannot pay its liabilities, the shareholders and the managers will not be held personally liable, and their personal assets are not at risk. We say that the shareholders have limited liability, and this is one of the major advantages of a limited company. Let's have a look at our key terms box here. This limited liability that we've mentioned is an important concept that you have got to understand. It's one of the main advantages of trading as a company. As we've seen already, it means that the amount that the members, the amount that the shareholders have initially invested, and this could be as little as £1 per share, they will be limited to losing that amount only, limited to that capital that they have invested in the company. Unlike sole traders and partnerships, companies can sue, they can be sued, and they can hold assets in their own names. A few things that you need to be aware of in the next paragraph. Companies are regulated under the Companies Act 2006, and as well as registering the company at Companies House, you also have to file a list of the directors, the company secretary if applicable, and the shareholders. So there's a lot more regulation, a lot more paper filling in and filing to do if you are a company. Your annual accounts, you have to file these as well at Companies House, and this means that financial information is publicly available. If you're a large company, a further requirement to have an external audit. Now, there are two types of company that exist. We have a private company, and this will have a name that will end with the abbreviation LTD, or limited in words. And the other one is a public company, and this one will have the letters PLC after it. The key difference is that public companies are allowed to sell their shares publicly. Selling shares to the public on the stock exchange. Whereas our private companies are not. Companies that are listed on the stock exchange are our public companies, our PLCs. Now, sole traders and partnerships had no format, no required format for their accounts. However, companies must file accounts under a set format, and this is also dictated by the Companies Act 2006.